Hello, everyone. Today, I'll show you how to build a device with two functions. It can be used as an antenna and also as a soldering device. I'll start with these two nail clippers. First, I remove the lever handles from both nail clippers to prepare them for the next assembly steps. Here, I have some bolts and nuts that will be used as connection points. I insert the bolts into the two small holes at the ends of the nail clippers, then tighten the nuts to secure them firmly. Every like and subscription motivates me to create more creative DIY projects. Thank you so much for your support. Next, I use a round magnet as an intermediate connection component for the device. I use a marker to draw two small lines opposite each other on the surface of the magnet to mark the wire placement points. Then, I prepare two small coils of electrical wire, one red and one blue. First, I apply a small amount of hot glue to the marked position on the magnet. Then I secure the end of the wire there and wrap it multiple times around the magnet. Wrapping the wire around the magnet creates a compact coil around the magnetic core, while also keeping the wire loops in place and forming a more concentrated connection structure for the central part of the device. Next, I repeat the same process with the blue electrical wire, wrapping it around the opposite side of the magnet to complete the two coils on each side. This video is for educational purposes only and is intended for DIY enthusiasts. Projects involving soldering, electricity, and mechanical tools can involve potential risks. Always wear appropriate protective equipment, follow proper safety procedures, and use tools correctly. Do not attempt any dangerous procedures if you do not have the necessary knowledge or experience. Then I prepare two small plastic caps to serve as the connection components between the antenna wires and the two nail clippers. First, I drill a hole in the center of each plastic cap to create an opening for the wires to pass through. Next, I drill a small hole on the side of each cap. This opening will be used to connect the cap to the bolt on the nail clipper, allowing the two parts to be secured together more firmly. I repeat the same process with the second plastic cap to create two matching connection components. Next, I prepare a wooden board as the base to hold the different parts of the device and provide a more stable structure. In the next step, I feed the two wires from the magnet through the holes I drilled in the plastic caps. Then, I secure the ends of the wires to the bolts on the nail clippers to create the connection points. Next, I insert the remaining section of the bolt through the small hole in the plastic cap, then tighten the nut to secure the two components together. Finally, I apply hot glue to the bottom of the plastic caps and attach them firmly to the wooden base. This helps keep the components in position and creates a stronger frame for the device. Next, I apply hot glue and secure the magnet in the center of the wooden base. This position keeps the magnet balanced between the two connection sections and makes it the central part of the overall device. I repeat the same process with the remaining plastic cap to connect the blue wire to the other nail clipper. Then, I apply hot glue and secure this plastic cap next to the cap connected to the red wire. Placing the two caps side by side keeps the components organized while providing clear spacing and defined positions for each connection. Next, I'll use a power plug as the antenna connector. First, I disassemble the different parts of the plug to prepare it for assembly. Then, I strip the end of the electrical wire on the opposite side of the magnet to expose the copper conductor, preparing it for connection to the plug. Next, I attach the metal prong of the plug to the end of the wire and tighten the screw to secure the connection firmly. Once the connection is complete, I put the plug casing back together to protect the internal components. Finally, I apply hot glue and secure the plug to the wooden base. This keeps the connector firmly in place and completes this part of the device frame. In the next step, I will use two copper springs as the receiving elements for the device. I attach the two copper springs to the remaining bolts on the two nail clippers, then use pliers to adjust and secure them firmly. Next, I will build a simple soldering device using a nail clipper. First, I install a bolt into a suitable position on the nail clipper and tighten a nut to secure it. This component will serve as part of the heating and connection section for the soldering tip. Next, I repurpose the metal core from an electrical terminal block as an intermediate component between the heating section and the soldering tip. Once the metal core is removed, I secure it to the end of the bolt on the nail clipper, creating a connection point for the soldering tip. Here, I prepare a short piece of electrical wire to serve as the wire for the soldering device. First, I strip the insulation from the end of the wire to expose the copper conductor inside, preparing it for the connection. Next, I twist the exposed copper conductor into the hole in the nail clipper to create a contact point. Because the nail clipper is made of metal, I wrap electrical tape around the metal sections that may come into contact with my hand. This provides better insulation and adds an extra layer of protection during use. For the remaining end of the soldering device's electrical wire, I attach an alligator clip to create a convenient connection point for the power source. The alligator clip makes the wire easier to connect and disconnect while helping maintain stable contact during testing. Next, I'll repurpose an old battery to make the soldering tip for the device. First, I use needle nose pliers to grip the carbon core inside and slowly twist it out of the casing. Once the carbon core is removed, I use a paper towel to clean its surface and remove any dirt or residue. In the next step, I attach the carbon core to a drill to prepare it for shaping. I spin the drill and gently bring the end of the carbon core into contact with the sandpaper to grind and shape the tip. Grinding the end helps create a smaller and more compact contact point, making it better suited to the soldering tip design and allowing it to contact the heated area more easily. After shaping the tip, I attach the soldering tip to the front of the soldering device and check the overall assembly before moving on to the testing stage. Next, I'll use a length of signal cable to connect the antenna to the TV. First, I strip the insulation from the end of the cable to expose the inner conductor. This prepares the cable for the connector and creates a stable contact point for signal transmission. Then, I attach the cable to a TV connector. This connector allows the cable to connect directly to the TV's antenna input, making installation more convenient. Next, I wrap electrical tape tightly around the joint to secure the connection and protect the contact point from becoming loose or accidentally shorting during use. I repeat the same process on the other end of the cable to create another connection point. This time, I'll use a female connector as the intermediate connection. First, I disassemble the female connector. Then, I connect the two cable ends to the two metal terminals inside and tighten them to ensure a stable electrical connection. Once the wiring is complete, I reassemble the connector as it was originally. The female connector will serve as an intermediate connection between the signal cable and the antenna, making it quicker and more convenient to disconnect or replace the cable. Finally, I connect the antenna plug to the female connector on the signal cable. At this point, the entire connection system between the antenna and the TV is complete and ready for a real-world signal reception test. First, I'll switch to a TV channel to check the signal reception without connecting the antenna. As you can see, without the antenna connected, the TV only displays the message "no signal." Next, I'll connect the DIY antenna to the signal input on the back of the TV for the actual test. And here is the result. Almost immediately after connecting the antenna, the TV channels begin to appear. The picture is clear, the colors remain stable, and there are no continuous signal interruptions. To make the test more convincing, I'll perform one more experiment. I disconnect the antenna from the TV and observe the signal changes. As soon as the antenna is unplugged, the screen instantly returns to the no signal message. All channels disappear, confirming that the signal truly came from this homemade antenna. Now, I'll reconnect the antenna once again. As you can see, within just a few seconds, the channels reappear and continue working normally. This proves that many electronic parts that seem to have only one purpose can be reused in completely different and surprisingly useful ways. Not only does this save money, but it also opens the door to many more exciting DIY ideas. Here, I prepare a battery to supply power for the soldering test system. First, I connect the wires from the homemade device to the two terminals of the battery to prepare for testing. Next, I connect the electrical clamp from the soldering device to the nail clipper connected to the red wire. For the ground wire, I connect it to the other nail clipper to complete the test setup. As soon as the soldering tip makes contact with the connection point, a spark immediately appears. This indicates that the system is producing electrical current and heat at the soldering tip, allowing me to proceed with the next tests. So, the combined antenna and soldering device is now complete and has passed the initial test. If you found this DIY idea interesting, don't forget to follow for more creative projects.